It's the final word story time, 172. My voice is croaky for a test match finished yesterday. I'm Adam Collins. Sat next to me is Jeff Lemon. Before we go out separate ways again, this would have been day 5 at Christchurch. This will be released, I don't know exactly when.
No,
but we're recording it today because we're together, sat next to each other, and that is better than recording it down the screen.
That's right.
That's the working logic.
There will be a time when this is released, or there won't, and if there isn't, you won't hear this, so it won't matter. Tree falls in a forest, etc. It's also raining this morning in Christchurch, but we'll talk about the post-test match stuff on the weekly show.
That's right, which would have come out before.
Already have come out, so we don't need to do it again. If you want to hear that stuff, listen to the other episode. That's how it works.
The last story time we recorded was at the Albert Ground when I got back in the country the day I arrived back, and I was quite jet lagged. And
the other country.
Oh no,
Australia.
We're not in Australia. We're in New Zealand. Easy mistake to make. So this is story time 172.
Close your eyes and walk a bit too far to the right, and you could find yourself in New Zealand instead.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, this is an episode that we've pulled together over the last 24 hours or so. So it won't be sort of a 2-hour epic. It'll be a slightly more streamlined version of it, but anything to get a story time recorded. So instead of going out all night with our colleagues, well, we did a little bit of that. Yeah. We spent time on this sofa preparing numbers instead.
Having a little chat with the Nerd Pledge Sleuth group.
As always, nothing better than that.
And talking stats. Talking football.
Monday night, we're talking footy. When the weekend comes.
Can't rule it out. It could happen.
The talk around the town is what happened on the weekend in the footy. There's a whole generation of Melburnians who are like shedding a tear as I sing that song very poorly.
Poor Corbin Middlehouse who finished calling the test match and then had to record an hour-long podcast about the Australian rules football round. I don't know how you track switch like that.
Yeah. Before we get into it, one point of introduction. I got a message from Georgie Heath this morning, who's a supporter and friend of our show and colleague as well. Worked with her for a couple of years on the Fair Break Invitational. She was running on the treadmill in England this morning, and she and someone she was running next to both realised they were both listening to the final word, which I thought was delightful. She said that unfortunately there was no chemistry between her and this bloke, so they didn't exchange numbers or anything like that, which would have been perfect. That would start of a sitcom, listening to the same podcast. Yeah. You know, she looks over her shoulder, he looks over her shoulder, and then one thing leads to another.
She says Wally Hammond's cock, and he says just fell right off, and then the next thing you know, wow.
And just like that. So hello to Georgie, and look, Jeff. With no further ado, let's get straight into things today.
Sure,
because we've got Brett with us as well, so we're keen to do a little bit.
He's ironing some shirts. We'll call him in a minute, but before we do that, we're going to do that because we're going to do a little bit of Nerd Pledge. Nerd Pledge. That's for Isha, who's upstairs.
I was going to say that was pointed up towards the stairs in our Airbnb here.
Yeah. Now, Nerd Pledge. It's a game that we play with nice people on the internet who fund this program. They are the backers of this program, and they do it.
Bankrollers.
They bankroll it, and they do it by sending in an amount of bankroll, an amount of payroll tax that is a very specific number. The number relates to cricket in some way, and we have to figure out what the number means. First cab off the rank. It is a very generous Nerd Pledge from Reggie, who was sent through $161.
Reggie from the Vic.
Reggie from the Vic Hotel.
Tremendous. The only captain that is seen off the final word 11.
Yeah, that's it. Many have tried and all have failed except for Reggie, who got over the line with the Royal Park Reds and the Vic Hotel in Brunswick. Great pub, got to say. One of the if you're doing the sort of swing through the northern suburbs, I reckon you're the Vic in Brunswick. You come down to Edie's in Carlton North. You go through the Curtin in Carlton proper. The retreat in Collingwood, not to be confused with the retreat in Brunswick on Sydney Road. There are two retreats. The retreat on Sydney Road also
loses fuck. The retreat in Brunswick.
Yes, but it has a special place in my heart. Spent a lot of time there when I lived near there. The retreat in Collingwood is a great, very well balanced pub. Sort of tucked out of the way, everything works, everything's nice, lots of dogs, open fireplace in winter, all that kind of gear.
I think the retreat's the one that's on the. No, I'm getting confused here. There's
it's just
pub
near Victoria Park.
Yeah, there's the pub. It might be the retreat, or I've got a feeling it's another one that is featured in the first scene of The Club, the 1980 brilliant 1980 film where they're going for their run. They're crossing the Eastern Freeway, and they end up back at Victoria Park. But they run past the pub with the old men sitting at the front. It's possible it's a retreat. But anyway,
it's on whatever the street is. You get onto Oh God, I'm trying to do my. You get onto Johnson Street and you go a couple of blocks up from Vic Park, from where the Magpies' home ground, sort of still is, but was when they used to play there. It's maybe like 2 blocks up to the right if you're going away from the city.
Right in the middle of the Carrying Bush.
Yeah, well,
right in the heart.
There is also a pub called the Carrying Bush now.
Yes, there
which
is.
They turned around, and then you swing down to the Cherry Tree at Richmond, where my lot play cricket. And that's a pretty good swing of Melbourne pubs, and of course the Commercial Club Hotel in Fitzroy.
Can't miss that.
The greatest of Fitzroy pubs, the Commercial Club, with Paddy behind the bar, polishing a glass, ready to pour you a beer.
I should say, in relation to the JC, the Curtain, which is across the road from Trades Hall, when all things being equal, this episode will be out before Friday. You know what? I might mention this on the weekly show, so it's moot. But if you haven't listened to the weekly show, I'm DJing on Friday night at Trades Hall. Come down. It's $15. You'll have fun.
If you're at the Curtain.
If you're at the Curtain, come across the road.
Just walk across the road. It's all you have to do. Right. Yeah, the retreat in Brunswick does feature in a Beyonce video clip as well. She shot something there sitting on the pinball machine, I think, which was quite a dangerous thing to do. Who knows what's happened on that pinball machine? But none of that is, all of that relates to Reggie. None of that relates to 161. But I thought Reggie's a straightforward kind of character. And this might be a straightforward kind of number. It might be 161 because that's how many runs Travis Head made when he made his first 100. And I feel like Reggie might be the kind of person who is impressed by the can-do attitude of Travis Head when it comes to batting.
It was a Saturday afternoon at Manuka. That's what I remember of that day. Joe Burns had made 100 earlier in the innings.
Curtis Patterson together for a long time.
Curtis would go on to make one as well, which was the 100 that
pushed him
proved
into
to be
the
his
rare
last
air.
innings. Yeah, the rare air, the Andy Gantome air.
He's got the highest average, not just in Test cricket, but even if you combine all international cricket, he still has the highest average of anyone to have ever played the game. Curtis Patterson, 144.
Do you think how close he was to having like a proper serious Test career? Didn't make that Ashes squad and sort of tapered off, then really went off the cliff after captaining New South Wales. Anyway, Travis Head made 100. It was in Canberra, the nation's capital, the first Test match ever in the nation's capital.
Indeed, you might say it was a poison chalice. Joe Burns makes 100, Curtis Patterson makes 100, Travis Head makes 100. Only one of them gets to play in the Ashes series that came later that year. Joe Burns got another little go a bit later on, but didn't quite work out. So Travis Head's the only one on the cursed day at Manuka that actually came good. But it was interesting. I was looking back at, like, it's kind of odd that he's 30. He sort of seems younger than that, but he's also been playing for so long that it seems like he should be older than that. In that he debuted for South Australia in 2012, I think, in first class, and then the subsequent year in the white ball stuff. It's a long time ago.
And he got made captain at 21, which I think underscores that point. They remember having a conversation with someone high up at CA not long after I started on the beat, so we're probably 2015 at this stage, saying, this is going to be a future captain of Australia. There's been this relationship with South Australian cricket. They're not a particularly strong side. Although in saying that, they did make a couple of Shield finals around that time. But anyway, they were known for not being a strong state team, and they were investing in the future with him, but with an eye to what he might do for Australia. And look, he's the vice captain of the Test team right now. Hasn't had a great summer, notwithstanding the 100 at Adelaide, but he has been anointed as the next Test captain. So it probably will come true in a couple of years, all things being equal, if Head doesn't lose his spot again, which has happened quite a few times.
It's curious how they came to the conclusion that he was going to be this future leader, because there's a lot of kind of just in-between stuff in that early career. So he makes his debut undistinguished. He makes 12 and 21, gets out to future Test players John Holland and Scott Boland. South Australia lose heavily to Victoria. Andrew McDonald was still playing when that game happened, which is kind of cute. Andrew McDonald made 33, dismissed Michael Klinger and Callum Ferguson, made 15 not out, setting up the target, and then got the opener out. Tom Stray. I don't remember Tom Stray very much. Sorry, Tom. But Andrew McDonald could play cricket. It was pretty good. Travis Head doesn't set the world alight in first class cricket. His first 4 seasons, he's sort of averaging 25 to 40. He makes a bunch of 50s, doesn't make any big scores, doesn't make hundreds. Makes his first ton for South Australia in 2015-16 and goes on to make it 3 in that season, and that's when he's away. So he gets a couple in each of the next 2 seasons to stay in contention as a Test player. But by that season where he has the first Shield ton, that's also he turns himself into a white ball monster in that period. That's the season where He has a big barbecue cup when they're playing it in the carnival in October.
That's right, yeah.
And then he has the Big Bash, a huge Big Bash, capped off by the New Year's Eve game, which I'm sure you remember, the century on New Year's Eve.
Well, I don't remember it strictly speaking. I was on the dance floor at finishing school.
Okay.
Not finishing school, at Razzmatazz upstairs. Remember the Exford?
Yep.
The second level of the Exford. Well, you once stole the Razzmatazz poster, did you not? From
Yeah,
there?
still got it.
Still got it.
Sorry, guys.
Sorry, Caitlin. Sorry, Ted. But yeah, we were.
I was going to say, it wasn't a thought through decision. It was a decision affected by other things.
I remember at the time you rationalised it by on the bottom of the Razzmatazz poster, like the logo, had all the bands they would play.
Yeah.
And you were offended by the fact that Arctic Monkeys aren't playing at the
They're
Exford.
not here. Where are they? Where's Alex Turner? Haven't seen him. Did he pop out the back? Where's Susie and the Banshees? Haven't spotted them. Haven't spotted them. The Cure, are they here? Okay, that does sound like something I would say while being obnoxious.
Yeah. But you had that in your living room, and I went round to your place for some reason or another. I'm like, dang on, that's my people. They're my what the. And I told Caitlin, and she was mortified. And I think in the end they had to get another one printed. So, cheers for that. Anyway, doesn't matter. But yeah, that was the night. It was 42 degrees in Melbourne, and it was. I think I said on the dance floor to someone that night, I've never been wetter. Just absolutely soaked through with sweat. And then we got through the news at midnight, not midnight, earlier than that, that Travi had made this astonishing 50-ball 100 that gets referred to constantly as the moment the Big Bash, reached maturity or something like that.
Yeah. When it became a spectacle, perhaps. Maybe this is the time to get Barrett in. He's hanging around over there.
The pride of South Australia.
Well, because what I'm interested
Here he is.
in.
Come on. Hop in the middle. Come on.
What I'm interested in is now that you are the representative of South Australia is how Travis Head is seen and what he means to South Australia and South Australians.
I remember having a chat with Greg Blewett about this because in the 90s he was the Travis Head of South Australia, right? And I guess when you come from a state like South Australia, for me personally it was very strange. I covered all my domestic cricket in Mumbai before I moved to Australia, and Mumbai won everything. And then to move to South Australia and to realize, they haven't not won a Sheffield Shield in 30 plus years or 20 plus years, but also the fact that they don't produce a lot of international cricketers, which is quite telling.
Yeah, they're the Saurashtra of the Sheffield Shield.
Oh, no, they're not Saurashtra. They're almost like the Tripura or something. Like
Baroda.
Baroda is a good call. Actually, Baroda have won the Ranji Trophy many, many years ago. And they would randomly produce cricketers here and there, the Pathans or Kiran More and the likes. But I think every time there is a Shield game in South Australia, in Adelaide, the amount of media Travis Head has to do. So 2-3 days before the game, he'll do TV. And then he'll do the print, which is basically just Andrew Ramsey and me. And then after 4 days of Shield cricket, invariably he'll either be the only guy who does something of note, or when he was captain, be the guy who has to kind of talk about why they lost again or why they've had a collapse again. And he's also doing like these private chats with TV. So every match he would end up doing at least 6 or 7 interviews or 6 or 7 press conferences. That's a lot for Travis Head or anyone for that matter. But he is, and you could see, in the last few years, you've noticed every time there's especially a day-night test in Adelaide, everybody's in the village green, right? Nobody watches, except when Travis Head walks out to bat.
Yeah.
And last year when he made that 100, not this summer, the previous summer against the West Indies, what I really felt bad for, or who I felt worst for, was poor Alex Carey, because Travis Head's made this 100. He gets run out, starts yelling at Cameron Green and walks off. And for those 15 minutes, everybody was watching. And then there was this whole drone around the ground, around the Adelaide Oval, because Travis Head's gone. And they all go back to the village green, even though Alex Carey, the other mighty South Australian, had just walked out. And Greg Blewett said the same. Like, there was so much pressure on him to kind of represent South Australia, right? Like, it's always, it's different in Western Australia. I know they are parochial, but they have so many cricketers who come through the ranks. So they're parochial about all of them. But here, I think you get identified, and I think Travis Head is a great example of that, where he gets identified very early on as this mega star. And he just has to deliver not just for South Australia, but as a South Australian every time he plays for Australia.
And I think part of it is performing in Adelaide. So he'd made the one-day 100 on Australia Day in 2016, I want to say, maybe 2017. 2017 against Pakistan.
He debuts on Jan 26 in 2016 in a
right.
T20.
That's right. So a year on, that's exactly right. So a year
Just
on
after
from
the
that.
New Year's Eve game. It's when the Big Bash actually does what the Shield used to do, which is give players a chance to get into the national team.
Yes, because it was January
based on their
26th at Adelaide against India, and it was the national day for both.
Yeah, because December 31 he makes the Big Bash 100, and then they're like, we'll get him in there, and he doesn't make any, he gets out for 2. And Australia lose the game, so it's not auspicious, but he gets in the team.
So he's had a couple of big days at Adelaide Oval, well, 3 really. So the Big Bash 100, the international debut, the century against Pakistan. I'm getting there. Yeah. The century against Pakistan, but making 100 on Adelaide Oval as a South Australian. The previous player to do that was Greg Blewett on his Test debut in early 1995. I mean, that's a really long time for our dear friend Matt Clemo, he was so wrapped up in all of this. Seeing an Adelaide boy make 100 at Adelaide Oval meant so much more, and you probably do become a bit blasé about it when you're from. And it's not as though South Australia aren't a successful sporting state. I hasten to add, South Australia is a sensational sporting state. There was just some reason. Well, not some reason. There's just been some. It's just been the case that for whatever reason, there hasn't been anyone else come through apart from him between times to go on and make that 100. So that night,
it's the curse. It's when Don Bradman of South Australia latterly dogged Clary Grimmett of South Australia latterly. Everything went out the window.
That's a fair point. It's the Babe Ruth thing, or something like that. Cricket's version of it, South Australian cricket's version of it. But yeah, just to finish that point, how it felt in Adelaide that night when he made that 100 against the West Indies in a day-night Test match, and makes another one this summer, of course. But the first one felt triply significant.
Oh, South Australians were emotional, got really emotional. And when you go and watch Sheffield Shield cricket in Adelaide, you see the same people. It reminds me of when I got into the metal music scene in Mumbai. You see the same people in the same spots.
It reminds you only in that way and in no other way.
No other way, yeah.
It's the most genteel kind of...
It is.
All of the English people who moved to Australia moved to Adelaide, basically.
Pretty much. And they also have that British accent, don't they? Like I do. That's why I fit in. But it was so emotional that, and the Greg Blewett thing I speak about, I was hosting a breakfast or brunch thing the next morning, and obviously this wasn't planned, but the previous night is when Travis Head makes that 100. So we're there at the Bath in Norwood, really nice pub, talking of pubs, and like, you know, all the questions were around that because Blewett was the last guy to do it. Yeah. And Blewett was in fine form that morning. One thing he said was like, and it completely summed up what Travis Head must feel like. Because if you come from a state like that where like literally the state's hopes are rested on you, but also from a very young age you're identified as the guy, you start believing in it, right? And Greg Blewett makes this fabulous start to his test career. And I remember him saying, so they go to West Indies for the famous 94-95 when Australia win there for the first time. And Greg said, I only hung out with Brian Lara because I thought we were the next big things of world cricket. So the plus side of it, he said, was like Brian and I became really good friends and they do commentary together these days. But also at some point I realized, well, maybe I'm not the next Brian Lara of world cricket.
Maybe I'm the next Sherwin Campbell.
Perhaps. I think he could have a slightly better record than Sherwin Campbell. Actually,
Sherwin Campbell played some great innings.
He did. I mean, both of them made double hundreds, don't forget. But I think you could see that, and I think it played a role in Greg Blewett's later career. I remember interviewing him many years ago about what it was like when, you know, suddenly you felt like, you know, you weren't the only guy, and then South Australia had to go and look for someone else. And like there was Darren Lehman at that point, and they feel so much more hard done by. Like you talk to people around South Australian cricket, the people they talk about the most are Darren Lehman, Jamie Siddons. Yeah. Obviously, David Hooks is the cult hero, right? But all these other guys who they think should have played a lot more. And I think that there was that feeling around Travis Head as well a few years ago when you remember he was dropped from the Test team and white ball cricket seemed to have moved on from him. And like, would he end up becoming the next one of those guys, like the has-beens of Australian cricket? Thankfully for Travis, he has come back, and last year was great. And you can see it. And the fact that I think also quietly they take this pride in a South Australian being a cult hero. Like, and the fact that Travis Head is the guy that everybody wants to celebrate. Like,
I don't think he'd mind me saying that last year I saw him after a test match. And I think it was his 25th match. I feel like it was his 25th because I know that's how many Buff played.
Get a special cap for that in England.
Yeah, quite. I'm 90% sure that's how many games Buff played for Australia, right? Test caps. And Trav's comment was
20. Might have been 27.
whatever the number
27.
was. Yeah, okay, 27. He goes, I've played 27 test matches, same as Buff. I'm kind of satisfied now. And it wasn't being insincere. It was like to him or to his generation of young kids growing up, to be Darren Lehmann or to equal Darren Lehmann in terms of test caps actually had some significance. Whereas if you were from somewhere else, it may not carry quite the same prestige. So I found that quite interesting that there's that strong through line with Lehmann. And you're right, there is that sense that he missed out on so many opportunities. 12th man as early as 1990-91, takes until 1998 to get an opportunity, gets back in the test side in 2002, 2003 where Mark Waugh retired. So has that nice run towards the end, but still a bloke who made 87 first-class hundreds and dominated so much for South Australia, more Shield runs than anyone, and Yorkshire likewise. And you look at it on paper, how did he not play more Test cricket?
Yeah, and I think another thing that's happened is the fact that Travis Head is purely from Adelaide, like born and brought up, not in Adelaide, but around Adelaide, in South Australia. They take a lot of pride in that as well. So poor Jason Gillespie, obviously, he's done great work with the Redbacks in the last 2-3 years, but he's also ended up getting recruiting a lot of cricketers from elsewhere, right? And you see the guys who are doing consistently well for them. Nathan McSweeney made 100 yesterday, Nathan McAndrew, Jordan Buckingham. None of them are originally from South Australia. So every time I do commentary on Shield cricket, you can hear a lot of the locals going, yeah, all right, but where's the Adelaide faithful? Yeah, where are the homegrown talent? So
where's that Barossa Valley grapes?
Pretty much, like, yeah. And if you're Jason Gillespie, what do you do? Like, do you kind of compromise on getting your team back up into the upper tier of the Sheffield Shield, or do you focus on just sticking to the homegrown talent? And that's the big conundrum for him, and which is why every time Travis Head does go back and he plays for South Australia, it's a big thing. But look, I interviewed him during the World Cup, and one thing that stood out for me was him saying how he wasn't relieved, but he was kind of okay with the fact that he isn't captain anymore, because he felt that the captaincy being thrust on him at such a young age in the long run did have an impact on his career, where he had, like I said, not just on-field responsibility, but off-field responsibility. Like flying the South Australian flag for the Redbacks and for Australia, I think took a toll. So he's in a good place in that sense, not having that load on him.
Yeah, you can't really captain if you're not there. Bharat, we'll let you get ready. Thank you for jumping in. You can squeeze out.
We will see you soon somewhere.
Well,
you're going to be on the road with Jeff for the next couple of weeks. I'll say goodbye to you after this episode.
I'll see you soon in the car in an hour or so. Right. So where are we? We've got 2016 comes into the T20 side, doesn't do terribly well. Comes into the one-day team in mid-2016, gets out for one. They lose the game in the West Indies. Hasn't got an auspicious run with debuts so far.
There is just one more thing I'll say, just to put his life into perspective. I think 2 or 3 years ago, there's this one big house on the market that nobody was really ready to touch, or there's this whole thing about like who's going to buy that house. And when Travis Head bought that house, they just made it public. They're like, it's fine, like it's Travis Head, like so it's not just on the field, it's just off the field. The fact that he's always on camera or always on the spotlight, I think just adds to being that one mega star from there. Hopefully Alex Carey takes over.
Terrific. Thanks, Baz.
Yes, so 2016, he takes Glenn Maxwell's spot in Sri Lanka in the 50-over team.
He does. He overtook Maxwell. Maxwell got dropped in the Caribbean in 2016 for the first time out of the one-day side, and Head replaced him. You were on that tour, Jeff. I wasn't. It was in no small part due to Head's bowling. They really liked him as a bowling option as well, and Maxwell had to miss the latter part of that series. And in Sri Lanka, Maxwell was only picked for the T20s, and it was Head who was preferred in the one-days.
And Head played in that T20 where Maxwell makes the 145 opening. Head makes runs in the middle order in that game, quick runs too. He makes like 45 off 18 balls or something like that.
Got them to about 240 at the end.
Huge score. But interestingly, he's by the middle of 2018, he's out of both white ball sides, and then he's brought into the test side at the end of 2018, debuts in the UAE where we were calling. That November, initially it goes to trend with his debuts, out for a duck, first innings, caught it short leg, off, Pop
It
quiz?
was the tall off spinner who took a six-fer, whose name is Bilal Asif.
There you go. You still got it.
Still got it.
Yes, but you get a second innings in Test matches, and so he puts the hoodoo right at that stage with his debuts. He makes 72 in the fourth innings.
Crucial runs.
Crucial.
Forgotten. Everyone talks about
yeah.
Khawaja, including us. But if not for Head, just putting a little bit of pressure back onto Pakistan.
Well,
at that point.
He's not out overnight. So
That's right.
they lose 3 for none, Australia, remember. Both the Marshes and Aaron Finch, I think, get out without the score moving. Head gets through to stumps. Then he bats through the first session on day 5. Did he get 2 lunch or is he out just before lunch? Either way, he bats to about, it might be the over after lunch when he gets out. And helps support Khawaja for long enough that Khawaja's able to get through and save the game. And he starts this run, which is kind of funny because he's thought of as a hit and miss player, but he has this streak at the start of his career. 72, after the 72, 14, 36, 72, 14, 58, 19, 20, 34, 20, 84, 161, 59, 35, 51. So he goes 15 innings without making a single figure score after a duck at the start. And so even when he's not making a big score, he's making an 18 or a 20 or a 30 or something that helps. He contributes a bit even when he's not making big runs.
Which isn't really how we see it now, right? Like it might be that he's getting to 10 or 12 or whatever, double figures now, but we are now more accepting. Not everybody, I hasten to add, not everybody, but most people are more accepting of his feast to the famine approach that we spoke about on the Daily Show yesterday, and that includes those 2 caught at third man dismissals in the same Test match against India at Perth, which kind of, for those who weren't on Travis Head, who didn't fancy him as a cricketer, that was an easy thing to point to for the next couple of years.
But it's interesting that it wasn't fully feast or famine with him. He wasn't a Marcus North 0 to 100 kind of player. The run of ducks that he's had just recently, this is the weird thing. So his first 72 innings in Test cricket, he has only 3 ducks in that time. And then just recently,
3 and 4 innings?
6 innings, 3 golden ducks, plus a score of 1, plus the 100 in Adelaide. And then his last 3 innings in New Zealand, 29, 21 and 18. So still doing a bit. You know, I mean, you'd rather have a player whose low scores are 20 rather than whose low scores are 0, because 20 can still be part of a partnership. I mean, 20... Even though he gets out early on the last day here in Christchurch, that what he did on the previous evening is important because that gets him through to stumps when they're suddenly 4 for 34 and stuffed. And if he gets out then, it's a much worse result than, you know, they add 40 runs before stumps and he gets some sort of season through. So there can be value in what looks like a low score on the scoreboard is all. Anyway, that's kind of how he starts off, and he makes contributions, I guess. So when Adelaide 2018, when Australia lose very narrowly to India, he makes runs there. He makes runs when they do win in Perth. Edgbaston 2019, important partnerships in both innings, doesn't make big scores, but does support Smith and help Australia out when they need it.
That's a low-key important one. So day 1 of the Ashes at Edgbaston, where it is, you know, cliched as it is, a cauldron on that day. It is so loud. Bancroft and Warner opening first Test match after the bans, both dismissed quickly. Anderson in his 4 overs must have beat the bat 12 times before going off injured and missing the rest of the series. But Broad's all over them, and it's Head who bats with Smith and gets them through to lunch. So instead of being sort of 5 or 6 down and it being kind of like 1997 at Birmingham, it was 3 for, let's say, 70 at the first break, and it gave Smith... I know they lose a bunch of wickets in the middle session. It's 8 for 120 anyway, but Head gives them at least something to work with at the start, which could have easily been an all-out 100 kind of day.
Yeah, it makes 35 there, then 51 in the second to build up that big lead when Smith makes his second 100 of the game. And then... gets squeezed out by the end of the Ashes, though, for the all-rounder in Marsh to bowl at the Oval. He gets back in and makes his ton against New Zealand in the 1920 home season.
Gutsy 100, that, because it was when they were just bowling bounce it the whole time, weren't they? And on a pitch it was allowing it, and he gutsed it out. And I thought that was an impressive innings.
And then they play so little in that era that it's the next season, the next home season against India, when they play again, gets dropped after the MCG test after a couple of shockers against India. But I just can't quit you. They can't leave Travis Head alone. He's back for the Ashes the next season. Lamps England in Brisbane, 152 at the Gabba, 101 on the green top when the pink ball's doing plenty in Hobart. Has his documented issues in Pakistan and Sri Lanka although he bowls well in Sri Lanka, and then comes back to make 99 and 175 against the Windies. And then that crazy South Africa series where he makes the 92 on the minefield at the Gabba when nobody else can make more than about 20. He smacks 92 in no time, wins the game for Australia just about single-handed, follows it up with 51 and 70 in the next 2 tests against South Africa. And then into that 2023, sort of miraculous 2023 year where he's got license against India, hits the fast 43 in Delhi when that's worth about 3 times that many runs, 49 not to win the game in indoor when they could have been in trouble, 32 and 90 on the easier track in Ahmedabad, backs it up with 163 in the World Test Championship final at the Oval to beat India there, and then through the Ashes, 50 at Edgbaston, 77 at Lords, 39 and 77 at Headingley, 48 at Old Trafford, 43 at the Oval. Again, finds a way to contribute to every scorecard they've got. And then this weird run he's had recently where he keeps making first ball ducks, which just hasn't happened before in his career. So I don't know. It's a funny old career, but he's the guy who can do the big things, who can make you 150s and win games. And I suppose for the most part, people have accepted that, but it only takes a few low scores for that to change, I guess.
Second most test runs in the world in 2023, and that afternoon at Leeds when they got back for one session, and he teed off at the end and batted through and got Australia to the point where they were setting England 250 odd to win. That was an important contribution, albeit in a losing effort. Okay, Jeff, that's Travis Head. The number was 161 on the knocker. Thank you, Reggie. You're a great man. We have to take a break on the final word. On the other side of it, I'll get a go.
Yeah, it's the final word. It's story time.
It is final word story time, and we should take this moment to talk about the phenomenal offer that we have with NordVPN.
Yeah, okay,
Jeff.
We should.
NordVPN have been with us throughout the course of this summer, and my understanding is from well-placed sources that they'll be continuing on with the show for the next few months as well.
Interesting.
For the next few months as well.
Okay. Well,
do you want to share some thoughts, and then I'll share some more?
I want to share a thought that says if you're a tech head, if your head has tech in it, if you want to encrypt your traffic to stop your ISP from throttling your bandwidth based on traffic type, and who amongst us has not been outright victory?
Reverse outrighted when they've been trying to throttle their bandwidth.
Yeah, don't throttle my bandwidth based on traffic type. If there's one thing I ask people not to do at the start of a new friendship, do not throttle my bandwidth based on traffic type, and yet ISPs go ahead and do it. You can get around that.
Fuck those guys.
You can stop them doing it. You can route your traffic through 2 servers for extra security, a double VPN. Why have one VPN when you could have
double
2?
What?
Double Nord.
Double Nord.
Double Nord. You can link your devices with MeshNet for secure file sharing and LAN gaming, and you can get a dedicated IP to avoid online block lists.
Everyone's been using it. I'm not going to name which colleague because I don't know whether he wants to be in trouble with the LAW in New Zealand, although I suspect we're beyond that point now. Jeff, can you bring the page back just where it was a moment ago? So I'll need that in a second. But they were watching the Australian telly on their in New Zealand in the press box. How are they doing that, you ask? How are they doing that?
NordVPN.
NordVPN. To get the best discount off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/TFW. That's in the show notes. No risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee, and you'll support the podcast in the process. Link in the show notes, nordvpn.com/TFW. The best VPN going, 30-day, risk-free. Give it a crack.
30,
on with the show.
30 days and 30 nights. Right, we've had Reggie's 161. We've got Bradley Waring with $8.89. It's in USD. Bradley's a new pledger. Welcome to the show, BW.
Terrific. Okay, so $8.89 is a funny number in a way, because typically when I see a number and I've got a free swing, I can sort of sense it. You know, if this were 8 for 42, I go, well, that's bowling figures. You know, that feels like someone's taken a really impressive match-defining, series-defining 8 for. We'll go and tell that story. This, not quite so much. So there hasn't been an 8 for 89 in Test cricket, for example. There have been 4 7 for 89s, including Dennis Lillee against England at the Oval in 1981. Mike Whitney took 7 for 89 against the Windies in Adelaide in 1989. Danny Morrison 7 for 89 at the Basin in 1993.
We're DLF maximum.
The last time that New Zealand won in Australia. No, actually, that was Auckland, wasn't it? That was in that series. And Harath. So a few final word faves in that lot. 7 for 89 against
the double R's and the double D's.
In Colombo in 2013. The most expensive. So, I was thinking, well, what other 8 fors are there? The most expensive 8 for it won't surprise you to learn, is Jason
crazy.
living a vida loca, living the crazy life.
Crazy.
8 for 215. The most expensive 8 for a seamer, Max Tangles Walker, 8 for 143 at the G against England in 1975. 889. I just sort of thought I'd spread my wings a little bit here. Well, at least initially. There were 889 commandos hired to guard the Pakistani and West Indies players when they went to Karachi for a series in 2021.
Is that an auspicious number?
It's in the news reportage, in the reportage.
Okay.
Thought that was noteworthy. I don't think there was 889 commandos protecting us in 2022. Not that there needed to be, by the way.
Yeah.
But I think that's reflective of how much extra security at the very start when cricket returned to Pakistan. They were overdoing it on purpose to reinforce to everyone involved that it was safe.
3 lions, 99 Luft balloons, 1,200 techniques,
And 889
commandos.
Yes, so that was a series in. Actually, looking at it here, it was December 2021. So only a couple of months before we rocked up in February 2020. So I've got that memory of when we got. I'm not sure if you rocked up to this when we got walked onto the tennis court one day.
For a press conference.
Yeah, so we were in this
Ashton
world.
Hager.
Yeah, that's right. And Swepo, I think, as well.
Yeah.
We were in this world where they were saying that we couldn't do stuff because of COVID, which was obviously comical. It's just they couldn't be fucked, really. And we got walked through...
past the hotel. Out the back of the hotel. Down a laneway.
And as we're doing it, Brat was with me, and we had like 8 security guards with machine guns walking, half a dozen press back, and Baz is like, this is exactly how the assassinations happen, when it's meant to be the close personal protection. Anyway, not casting aspersions, trying not to.
There is an uneasy feeling when you're being walked down a narrow laneway by a bunch of guys with submachine guns strapped to their chests.
Yeah. Love that tour. By the way, I look forward to going. I'm hoping I can somehow get down to the Karachi Test match later this year when England are there. We'll see if we can make that happen. It's not far from Derek Ismail Khan.
Yeah.
Pondered this.
True.
The white whale of our show, having not yet made it to DIK. One day. There were 3 Ashes Test matches in August 89. I thought 8th month 89. 8th month 89.
Yeah.
Maybe possibly. Australia won the Ashes at Old Trafford in August of 89, which was significant. The first time they'd won regained the Ashes in England since 1934 and all of that. In that test at Manchester, Jeff Lawson, Henry, great man, took a 6-for, and Terry Alderman took a 5-for. So 2 of the guys who bowled so well throughout the course of 89, the other being Merv Hughes, who I had the chance to interview yesterday, which was nice. The 5th test match was at Nottingham, also in August 89, where Michael Atherton and Devon Malcolm made their debuts. That was the test where Taylor and Marsh batted all day and Tubby went on to make his 219, and Merv finishes them off. And the last test in August of that year was at the Oval, where Dino made a ton and Terry Alderman took yet another 5-for.
Through the window, Terry Alderman.
Yes, that's right. I used to try and do that thing where he would run up with his hands with his left hand was right in front of his nose, then he would open up the window. He'd kind of open up the window at the last minute. He kind of, in quite a pronounced way.
Lean out the window and he'd go, "Not happy, Jan."
That's quite a reference. That sort of thing. Adam Joir's going to like that when he listens to this. 88.9 series averages. You kindly did this for me. There is none. No one's had an average of 88.9.
Because you'd probably have to play 10 innings, wouldn't you, in order to get the decimal to the right place.
Yeah, you're better at that than I am. But yes, that does stand to reason. So there's no way you could play 5 innings and...
Well, because it's got to be, it's multiples of 9. Like how many multiples of 9, of 0.9 does it take to hit an even number?
How many dudes roll like this?
I think it's 10. I think you'd have to have 10 multiples.
How was Feast not on the fucking DJ set at, that's not Feast, it was Feist. On the DJ set that was being, because it was this...
Feast is
someone else.
McDonald's thing,
something else, yeah.
McFeast.
El McFeast.
Be quite the thing if El McFeast are on the... I don't know if she's released any music as such. I don't know if she's got a lot of recorded tracks. She probably did. There was that period of the 90s where pretty much any public figure released some sort of novelty song, along the lines of Marvellous for Billy Birmingham or you'd have a track if you were a popular radio personality or something. Pauline Panstown kind of era where you just talk over the top of some background stuff. There probably is an Elle McFeast track.
I wouldn't be surprised if Libby Gore released something at some point or another. Why don't you have a quick look at that? Look at Libby Gore and Elle McFeast.
Discography is what I'm looking at right now.
Your search history. Well, you mean incognito there? We should do our YouTube search histories again. Jeff and I share a YouTube account, thus we get to see what the other one searches, and it makes for some pretty enjoyable reading occasionally. Not just 80s
Last
footy,
FM,
although quite a lot of it.
Music videos, stats and photos.
The Siren Sounds, Elle McFeast, 1992 CD. You've got it. Bang.
I thought there had to be something.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. 92 was when Live and Sweaty, wasn't it?
Was
that
the biggest thing in the world.
It's raining men, and thank God for Edna Danaher, because
Wow.
you had the 4 Danaher brothers.
Last FM, she's got one listener.
Drop it in. DC, can you please drop in thank God for Edna Danaher? Let's see how we go here.
I don't know about this. Maybe cut it after.
Here we go. What do we got? We got
Only Brunette at the Brownlow. The Crows, an ode to the Adelaide Football Club. Well, that'll please Barrett and co. We've had a big South Australia show. Video smash hits. Thank God for Edna Danaher. The Draft, At the Tunnel, and an ode to Renee King.
This is good stuff.
This is on Elle McFeast's
This is good stuff, Jeff.
1992 release, The Siren Sounds. Well, we were on the money. I did not know that this existed, but I felt sure it had to exist.
Yeah. Yeah, it's in the style of comedy, and it says the genre is non-music, so it may not be a track per se. But there used to be,
No. But Jim Owen had an album. I mean, everybody had an album in this era.
Yeah. Where are we? You know where we are? We're back to 1950-51. Okay. Let's sharpen up a bit here.
Sure.
The nearest to the pin on an 88.9 tour or
average
series average is what I'm looking for, with Len Hutton, 88.83 in the 1950-51 Ashes. I'm going to talk more about that later.
Mm-hmm.
Spoiler alert. Instead,
I can't find the Siren Sounds Elle McFeast album on YouTube. I've just got AFL Siren sound effects.
Oh, you can get every siren in Australia. There's every single. This is it. No, that's get off that one. Let's do this in real time.
Long.
Go to every siren.
Let's get on with Len Hutton.
But it's beautiful. You can tell by the ear if you watch enough footy. They play every ground siren one after another, and you're like, yeah, that's the G. Yeah, that's Princess Park. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the WACA ground. Yeah. That's VFL Park. That's how it used to sound.
You may know that. I'm not sure that everybody knows.
I think most footy people do. You can feel it in your heart. Like I knew that's the MCG, for example. 2014-15 Sheffield Shield final. We come full circle. We get back to figures.
Okay.
A season where Victoria topped the Pops quite comfortably. Great era for Victorian cricket. But due to the World Cup, the 50-over World Cup for the men in 14-15, they had to pick somewhere else to play the final. Oh. And they picked Bellerive Oval in Tasmania, which kind of makes sense considering their attack included Pattinson, Siddle, Boland, Stoinis, and Dan Christian, who then was very, very handy, and still is, but as a seamer, you've got 5 genuine wicket-taking seam options. Also, a gun spinner. We'll come to him in a sec. WA bat first, remembering that being second on the table, they have to win this match to...
Vic's win with advance.
A draw. Vic's win with a draw, that's correct. This might have been the Shield final Alex Malcolm nearly came into debut in, by the way.
I think that was 13.
Or was that 13-14?
Yeah.
Anyway. And WA get a great start. They put on 130 for the first wicket. Cameron Bancroft makes 55, so he's a young player making his way. And Marcus Harris, playing for WA, makes 81. And that's significant because he's bowled on that score by Fawad Ahmed. This leads us into one of the most unusual and extraordinary careers in modern Australian cricket.
Just one quick sidebar here. As recently as November 2023, an Australian Story, it's a documentary series on the ABC, on Elle McFeast, who was a huge ratings winner and gave them a time slot win over Channel 7 and 9.
I'm glad. I'm not surprised.
November 2023, people were still locked onto the Libby Gore story.
I reckon that's perfectly reasonable. I remember we beat North by a kick 1993 Friday night. In fact, I'll dig deeper than that. Dunstall had a shot for goal with a broken sternum within 30 seconds of the game ending. North were top of the table, and he drills it from 50, and Hawthorn win by 2 points. It's a thrilling finish. It's on YouTube somewhere. I was there on that night, of course. And Dunstall went straight from the MCG straight to the ABC studios and was interviewed by Elle McFeast on Live and Sweaty. Now, this is how it worked.
Yep.
This is how it worked. It's a great era. That wouldn't happen now.
No.
That wouldn't happen.
You'd probably go to hospital.
You'd probably drop in hospital. You'd probably drop in hospital. I remember in that interview, he was asked about when he kicked his 17 at VFL Park in 1992. the 5th of May, round 7, when in the last couple of minutes, maybe even the last 30 seconds, he finishes the game as centre halfback, remembering the record's 18, Fred Fanning. So he ends the game chasing at halfback. About a minute before, Dean Anderson, great player, fucking great player, was in the goal square and kicked and popped a goal through. Dunstall was over the top for the hand pass, and typically he encouraged Anderson to kick the goal because he's the most unselfish player I've ever seen, Jason Dunstall. It's going to get emotional talking about him. And he got asked about that on that interview. He goes, why didn't you get the handball over the top? She knew her footy.
Yeah.
Helmut Feast knew her footy.
Yeah.
Where are we? Back to the Shield final.
Back to the Shield final.
Back to the Shield final. Loosey-goosey episode today. We've got another one to record after this as well. 130 for the first week at Marcus Harrison, out for 81. Yeah, Fawad Ahmed, what a career. Born in 1979. He and the Smashing Pumpkins. Played for Abbottabad. Between
That's where Osama got shot.
We're getting there. Yeah. Between 2005 and 2009-10. So, albeit briefly, he played a game in 05, a couple of games, but he wasn't like a permanent fixture of the Abbottabad team. He leaves in 2010 on a short-term visa, comes to Australia, and then ultimately claims refugee status. This is quite important. Now, remembering that Abbottabad, as you say, it was a enclave of extremists. It was up near the border of Afghanistan. It's where Osama bin Laden would go on to be captured and killed in the middle of 2011. So this is before all of that.
Other way around.
How do you mean, sorry?
I mean, they shot him a lot before they captured him.
Yeah, well, I'm just making the point. It all went down in Abbottabad, right? Yeah. In Pakistan, but right up in the northwest bordering Afghanistan. So it was a place that people had heard of, put it that way. It was put on the map in one, really put it on the map.
Taller than you imagine, Osama bin Laden. It's one of the great tweets. I can't remember who it is. He goes, Osama just should have hooped instead because he's tall as hell.
Yeah, he should have
Would
done
have been
something.
a better world if he'd hooped.
Yeah, other than that, could have bowled leg spin like Fawad Ahmed did. Not to draw a comparison between the two, but only because we're talking about cricket and Fawad Ahmed bowled leg breaks.
Tall spinner, Suleiman Ben. You come from a height, it can work.
He played for Hoppers Crossing originally, which is where Stuart Broad had played. Broady played out here. He played at Hoppers when he was 18, which would have been in 2004-05, I think. So 5 or 6 years later, Fawad Ahmed comes as a mature age player, and that's in the VT. Like, we played against Hoppers, playing for Mentone. Like, this is not Premier cricket. Yep. This is a very high level of park cricket, strong turf competition. The VTCA, rest in peace. I think it still exists in the northwest, but it's gone in the southeast. They've been absorbed within that cricket Southern Bayside. In fact, I know that because that's what Glenn Finkel was telling me the other week, and he would know because Hampton are in that comp and were previously in the VT. Anyway, so he goes from playing for Hoppers and seeking refugee status to playing for the Renegades. That's happening by January 2023. He'd applied for permanent residency in 2012, not 2023, 2013.
2012. 23, yeah.
And this is where it gets, it first comes onto my radar. So when I was working in Canberra in politics, I wasn't as engaged with cricket at this point as I might have been. And I was told about this cricketer who was seeking at that stage permanent residency and ultimately citizenship. And Brendan O'Connor, who was Immigration Minister, helped smooth that process with the great advocacy of Grant Poulter, who's a close friend of mine, who was working for Cricket Australia at the time as their government relations boss, and lots of other stuff as well. And CA did all the hard yakka working with the federal government to make this possible, which meant that he was able to, at the end of the day, play for Australia. And we'll get to that in a little bit. Before that, though, in 2013 at Manuka, he plays for the Prime Minister's 11. And that was the first night with the new lights. I remember being there for that. James Faulkner played as well against the West Indies. But it was a lovely night. These lights that have been talked about for so long had finally arrived in the nation's capital. The Andrew Barr, Julia Gillard lights, as they joked at the time, looked like the lacrosse nets or lacrosse. Is it a net? Lacrosse net or lacrosse stick?
Stick.
Anyway,
Stick.
Very impressive structure. They won an award, I'm pretty sure. Farwood played that night, and he gets his citizenship on the 2nd of July 2013, and that happens just before he's picked to play in the White Ball Series in September in England of the 2013. Plays 3 one-days and 2 T20 Internationals. So it's an extraordinary rise. 3 years before that, playing Saturday cricket, then playing for Melbourne University in Premier Cricket the year after, through the Big Bash, into the national team. It's a staggering thing when you consider by this stage he's already in his he's 34. He'd be 34 by this stage, having been born in 1979. a lot of focus on him asking to not wear the VB Tour logo on his shirt, Jeff, and that was in its own way controversial at the time. I think David Campese had a pop at him. Not that it matters, but there's that kind of level of he's in the culture war, right? Yeah. He's in the culture war as a consequence of that.
Yeah, the most enlightened group of sportsmen, those who play elite rugby union.
Yeah, sure, yeah, and he doesn't stay in the side, but he doesn't do too badly either. I went back and reviewed it. So 6 wickets at a decent economy rate. He didn't do much wrong. His debut was at Southampton, the day where Aaron Finch teed off and made the highest score in T20 International history to that stage. That was
152 or 3?
Yeah, 150-ish, I think it was. He certainly passed 150. So that puts all this into context in a way around this Shield final. Like, he's dead set flying, and they've done a lot of work to make him eligible to play for Australia. And then he's taken 40 wickets in the regular season. It's difficult to do. That's if he plays every game, 4 wickets a game. That's a high bar to reach. He's the main spinner for Victoria. He's bowling a lot in tandem with John Holland, but when they've only got room for one spinner in the final, Fawad Ahmed gets the spot, not John Holland. So after getting Harris through the gate with an absolute beauty, over the wicket, spins a mile. First innings of the game, he's already turning it a long way.
Left-hander.
To a left-hander. Gets Klinger caught behind with a sharp leg break for 18, classy. Gets Sean Marsh with the wrong one, caught behind for 6, and Sean Marsh at that stage at the peak of his powers or near enough. Then runs through the tail and claims the figures that we're dealing with here of 8 for 89. WA, he takes them from 5 for 372 to all out 421, remembering that if they get 500 or 550, and maybe you can from 5 for 372. It's only another 128 runs to get to 500. That is real scoreboard pressure in a 5-day match where you can turn the screws on Victoria. Boland, none for 85. Pattinson, none for 101. 2 blokes who have played exceptional cricket for Australia. But it's Fawad Ahmed in the first innings of the match with 8 for 89. I'm 90% sure that's the best figures ever in a Shield final.
I think that's
by the way.
Yeah.
Vicks end up getting 381. Bucky makes 100. There's rain. Harris makes 100 in the second dig for WA. But it is a draw, and the Vicks win the title. And he ends up for the season with 48 wickets at 25, and he gets in the Ashes squad. And that's the first press conference that I ever attend as a journalist. The day after the World Cup final in 2015, I had just finished up in my other job that was between when I was working briefly outside of politics, and I went along to this presser because it was in Melbourne. Went with Bretto. Thought I'll go along. I'll watch this. I'll see how the cricket media do their thing. See how it compares to a political press conference. And that's when they did a few things. They announced the West Indies squad, the Test squad, and the Ashes squad at the same time.
Right.
And they gave Fawad the tour he was going, and having taken that
end of March. That's interesting.
Good point. It was the end of March, and they were already announcing
29, I think, the World Cup final.
That's a good point. So it was the day that Brad Haddon was on radio getting stuck into the New Zealanders
for being too nice,
and being too soft, and at the same time, Uncle Rod and. I feel like there was another selector there. Certainly Rob Marsh was doing a press conference explaining his workings, and Fawad was there.
Mark Waugh back then?
Mark Waugh was one of them. He comes up in a sec, but there was a third selector who I can't quite put my finger on right now. But they get Fawad there to put the Aussie polo shirt on and to do the walk up and down the South Bank for all the cameras, because the expectation is that even though Lyon is the number one spinner, in the West Indies, you would anticipate 2 spinners. And there's only 2 spinners in the squad. Therefore, this extraordinary story is going to come to this remarkable, maybe not end, but next stage with him getting a baggy green. Let's go to Dominica. So I was in Antigua for the tour game. Gets hit around a little bit. 2 for lots. But 2 days out for the test match at Dominica. Again, first I've covered, right? He's the one put up for media under embargo. And now what does that mean, Jeff? He's playing. Yeah. He's playing the test. Yeah. There's no suggestion he's not in the 11. It's going to be 2 spinners. The pitch looks a bit on the ropey side there at Dominica. There's no one's even talking about 3 seamers. Stark's going to miss out. He just came over from the IPL. Stark had only bowled in the nets at Antigua. Hazelwood had taken 3 for 4 in the second innings in that warm-up game and was clearly going to be the attack leader. They were going to play a second seamer, Mitchell Johnson, who was the incumbent, and Stark would miss out again, and Lyon would play alongside Fawad Ahmed. And then the day before the test match, Mark Waugh, the on-duty selector, went out into the middle, looks at the pitch. We were out there with him. Looked at the pitch, spoke to the curator, and he goes, I don't no, I don't think it'll spin that much. And they picked Stark, and Stark actually did very well in that test, and it did prove to be a pitch that took more to seam than spin, notwithstanding Devendra Bishu turning it square and taking a 5-foot. But it was the Australian seamers that really roughed up the Windies. Yeah, ball of the century, quite right.
Brad Haddon, wasn't it?
So he doesn't get a test there, and by the time you get to England with us, he's a bit of a spent force. He runs into Daniel Bell-Drummond at Kent, who makes 100 in 80-odd balls, brilliant innings, and I don't think you were there for that one. You arrived for the next game at Essex, where he didn't play the second tour game. Did play at Northants when everyone had enough, and by that stage his tour was declining. He realised he wasn't going to play a test match, and sadly that's it for him as an Australian cricketer. He returns home, and to his credit, has a good Shield season in 15-16, taking 27 wickets, takes 27 more in 17-18. That's his penultimate season with the red ball, but as we know, he goes on to have a T20 career that takes him around the world. And I didn't realise that he was on the Renegades books, having been a bit of a journeyman in the BBL, as recently as 2023. He was 44 and still getting contracts playing T20 cricket. So, but yeah, in terms of the 8 for 89, where we started for this, for Bradley Waring, they were Farwood's best figures, best in a Shield final. He never let the big V down, as EJ would insist. Yes, played a massive hand in Victoria, winning the Sheffield Shield in Hobart 2014-15.
Yeah, and someone who's had to go through severe tribulations off the field, not just before he got to Australia, but afterwards with illness in his family and all of the rest of it, and who somehow manages to keep this remarkable positivity and keep being someone who's always publicly visible, encouraging other players and putting sort of goodness out into the world. It's a remarkable thing. Yeah,
I share that view. He's always been such a delightful person to see around in our jobs. Whenever you run into him, he's always keen to know what you're up to, and he's really embraced being an Australian. I mean, I don't just mean that that he goes to the footy on a Saturday, although I wouldn't doubt that he does. This was the second chance at having a life that could be fulfilling for him, and he's savoured it and embraced it. And yeah, the fact that he's got an Australian cap for his trouble and a lot of success playing domestic cricket is testament to his determination, and good on him. A great story, really great story.
We should pop in our second break here, and then we'll get through our last couple of numbers. The final word. Story time. 172? 172. That sounds right. All right, we've got an old favourite of the show. Not that Tim Minchin. As in Tim Minchin, but not that Tim Minchin. $3.57 is the pledge in Australian dollars. It comes with a clue, Adam.
The sum of 3 scores, and the only person to do this.
The sum of 3 scores. Now, cumulative answers are difficult because it is very hard to use statistics engines to try to help you find out what's going on. So we needed a starting point. But, okay, 3 scores. I thought sum of 3 scores. Initially, what should I look at first? I thought consecutive hundreds. Can I find 3 consecutive hundreds that add up to 357 and have something about them that is unique? I don't know, maybe they're all not out in a winning run chase. Maybe they're all something. I'll know it when I see it. So I looked at who's made 3 in a row in different formats. The closest to this is Ravi Bopara in Test cricket.
Oh, yeah.
His 3 consecutive hundreds add up to 355, not 357.
So it's before the 09 Ashes against the Windies, right?
Yes, and they are unique in that he's got the most Test hundreds by a player who never scored a Test 50.
Yes.
So
we've done the other way around recently. We've done most 50s without 100 now.
Yeah. And I was kind of excited, but I was like, I had a feeling it could be that, because I knew that they weren't big hundreds. Obviously if someone makes 150 or 180 or whatever, then they can't add up to 357 by the time you've got 3 centuries in there. But not quite. I missed out by 2. Gordon Greenidge made 3 consecutive tons that added up to 350. So that was 7 short. The twin tons at Old Trafford, and then when he crossed the Pennines to Headingley and made another one there. Polly Umrigar, final word fave. A former Indian captain in the 1950s and 60s, made 376 in 3 innings, 2 against Pakistan, 1 against England. So there was nothing there in the test sequences of 3. In one-day cricket, Quinton de Kock had those famous 3 consecutive ODI tons. They added up to 342, not 357. Syed Anwar had 3 that added up to 349, not quite. And Babar Azam just overshot the mark, added up to 360. When he made 3 against the West Indies in the UAE. There's never been more than 2 consecutive hundreds in women's Test cricket, and there have been quite a few 2 in a row in women's ODIs. and then the 4 in a row for Amy Satterthwaite.
Oh, yeah, that's
but
right.
Never
That's Australia.
a 3 in a row in one-day cricket. So, of course, Satterthwaite's add up to more than 357. By the way, Elise Perry, 213 at North Sydney Oval, and then the 116 in Taunton in consecutive innings. This, I hadn't quite clocked the consecutive bit, but this makes me even more annoyed. Remember how mad I was that she didn't try to score twin tons at Taunton?
Yeah.
Do you remember that last day? So the last day of that game, which we know is a draw, they're just batting it to death, Australia. Perry makes 76 not out from 144 balls, so going at a strike rate of 50, and then they shake hands an hour early. And nobody, it still bugs me, and I know that stats aren't everything, but nobody in that dressing room twigs and thinks, twin tons in a test match, has that ever happened before in a women's test? No, it hasn't. It's never happened. No one's ever done it. And there was a golden opportunity to do it and to get something, to get a story out of that last day. Like, okay, you've had a boring draw because you're being defensive and you're already ahead on points in the multi-format series and you don't care about winning the match. Fine, give us something. Give the public something to get excited about. You've just seen the first women's player to make twin tons in a test.
Yep.
They could have just, she could have upped the rate and actually gone for it a bit more because she was very defensive. Or B, they could have just kept playing for another half hour or whatever it is to get the extra 25 runs to make that happen.
I'm sure if we asked her, we didn't do a press. We did one with Motti that night.
We did one with Meg Lanning.
Sorry, right, with Lanning. Yeah, I'm sure if we
very chippy one because we were clear about the general disappointment that they hadn't tried to set up a win.
That's right. She didn't
and
much like the fact that we didn't like the fact that that's right. A bit back and forth there, wasn't there? Had we asked Perry, she would have said something to the effect of, it's a great game, cricket.
Yep.
I really love playing cricket.
Yep.
Great bunch of people I
Yep.
play cricket with, and I'm just glad that we got the win.
Yeah.
But you didn't win, but we got the win because we got the.
Yeah.
It would have been. It would have been the straightest possible bat.
Just doing what's right for the team. But again, and I don't think that everybody has to be as obsessed with stats as we are and think that they're important. Maybe they're not important. Maybe they're right to say, well, whatever, it doesn't matter.
This is more a milestone than a stat, though, isn't it? It would have been an opportunity for a significant milestone. I don't think it's not a quirk.
It's a PR thing, right? Like you're trying to sell the game, you're trying to sell the format. You're trying to sell having a champion player who is a champion player. So give them the opportunity to do something that's easy to point to. And had she done that, had she made the twin tons, it would have been 3 consecutive hundreds as well, which nobody would ever have done in women's test cricket.
Everybody knows Elise Perry is a champion.
So
champion.
Still
could have been
annoyed.
in the song.
Yeah, exactly. Still annoyed about that. Still annoyed all these years later. I thought could it be runs in finals? We had a look at I thought Elisa Healy maybe because she had the big runs in the World Cup final, the 50 over one, the big runs in the T20 World Cup.
Born
final
to play grand finals. Elisa Healy and Robert DiPierdomenico together at last. Final word guest Robert DiPierdomenico.
Yeah. So that didn't work because then we didn't have a third one where that needed to be 112. I think she made 112. I think in the game where Australia reached their world record winning streak of 26 in a row. Right. Something like that, but that wasn't a final. It would have. And bear in mind, I'm looking for a sequence of 3 that nobody else has achieved, and that's far too niche. That's something that nobody else could have achieved, right? You need to have made 2 winning scores in finals and 1 in the match that gets you a world record winning streak. Doesn't work.
No,
doesn't work. I did look at it, then at her highest scores, and this was. So I spoke to Tim and went, okay, give us a thread here, and Tim said, think about high scores. Her highest ODI score 170, highest T20 score 148. That adds up to 318. So had her highest test score been a 39, this would have worked. And the other thing that Tim said to me was, this number is now obsolete. So I was like, was her, I know, and so I was like, something that someone's made recently. She made 99 in the test against South Africa recently. Was her previous high score 39? Because if it was, that would be 357. She does have a test 39, but that was the Canterbury test in 2015.
Yes.
So that was too long ago for it to have matched up with the T20 and the one-day totals. So we were nearly
there.
Is
it though? Like, was that her highest score in Test cricket before the 99?
Only up until 2017, because she made 45 then, and then she made a couple of 50s on the last couple of England trips. So there was no point when her 3 highest scores in all formats would have added up to 357.
Annoying.
And if it had, it would have been years ago. So that wouldn't have been it for a pledge that came in within the last year. So, okay, unique though. So then I was looking at players who've got like 3 tons in all formats. Can I find something there? And I was like, how is it going to be unique? And we had a little chat about this between us ourselves and the others, and what could be unique? Unique could be reverse descending order. What if you got someone whose T20 best is higher than their ODI best, which is higher than their Test best? Because normally you expect it to be the other way around, right? Like the big champion players, they make a Test double 100, they make a one-day 150, and they make a T20 102 or something.
Got it.
Right? What if there's someone who's the other way around? Kevin O'Brien, almost. T20 highest of 124, Test highest of 118, but his one-day highest was 142, so he messed that up. A lot of the players who've made T20 tons haven't actually played a Test, so like Hasmatul Azaza, Finn Allen, Rituraj Gaikwad, Johnson Charles, David Miller, Riley Russo, Rovman Powell, Mark Chapman, catcher in the rye. They've all made T20 tons, but haven't played Test cricket. Mohammad Shahzad was close, the big boy Afghanistan keeper. You might remember belting them around when they beat West Indies in 2016.
I do. Yeah.
T20 World Cup.
He did the champion dance with Chris Gale out in the middle.
Yeah, I bet he did. T20 top of 118, Test top of 40, but his one-day top is 131.
Okay.
Alex Hales T20 116. Higher than his Test best of 94, but his one-day best is 171. Is that the Trent Bridge innings?
The 171. No, it wasn't. It was at the Oval when he made 171. No Test ton. The 94 was against Sri Lanka, I think, at Lords. That run when he went on, when he made an 80-odd at Leeds, an 80-odd at Durham, 94 at the Oval, all in one series. And we're like, well, this might work as the long-term replacement to Alex Hales, left-hand, right-hand, to Andrew Strauss, to bat with... Cook, they'd gone through a lot of openers to that point, but it didn't quite click. But yeah, he bought a tons now. He's doing other things.
Right. Ramanul Gurbaz, T20 100 even, Test best of 46, ODI best of 151. That blows it.
He made I think Gurbaz, no, he didn't. He made 118 2 days ago. I was going to say maybe he's overtaken his best one-day score. That's going to come up in the weekly show that we're recording after this.
Interesting. Glenn Phillips, 108 in T20s, 87 in Tests, but his one-day best is lower than either. He's made 72 only. So he could yet join the club if he got between 87 and 107.
Sounds like a spot betting thing. Yeah, if you're going to finish between here and here,
and 107,
then Hansi Cronje will give you a
leather jacket,
a bag of cash.
Paul Sterling, T20 best of 115, higher than his Test best of 103, but his one-day best is 177. They're all frustrating me. I was close. And then I found some sequences where it does work in terms of...
Bloody hell, you've done some work on this answer.
I've done some work on this.
Hope you fucking solved it by the end of this.
We'll get there. We'll get there. Surya Kumar Yadav, 117 in T20s, 72 in ODIs, a best of 8 in Test cricket. Is that right?
Yep, it was at he batted at Nagpur last year and got dropped after that.
Right. That doesn't add up to 357, but it is someone who goes in reverse order from T20 to 50 over to Test. Colin Munro, T20 109, one day 87, Test 15.
Yeah.
And Liam Livingston, T20 103, ODI 95, and Test 9. So they all go in reverse sequential order, but because there's 3 of them, they're not unique. So what would make it unique, Adam? What if somebody had done it where all of their scores were centuries? They had 100 in each format, but they went in that order. Who has 100 in all formats? Shane Watson does, but it's not
Maxie.
him. David Warner does, but it's not him. Glenn Maxwell does.
Gee, so we're going the whole way around the bend here and we're going back to Maxie.
145 in Pallacali.
I was going to guess that when you said 3 tons to add to 357. I go, Maxie?
That came up before. 145 in Pallacali. Took them on 66 balls, was it?
I was there for all these, I think. I was there, I commentated the Candy one.
You were there for...
I was at the Rancho Relaxo
you
for the 104.
You were there for 104 in Test cricket in Ranchi.
And his highest in one days was you were there for.
Yeah.
201 not out.
Well,
but this pledge is redundant. The number's redundant because before that, his highest score in one-day cricket was the Sydney... No, it was not the Sydney one. It was the Dutch one. No.
Earlier.
There's one in between there, isn't there? So there's the 100 at...
Yeah.
There's the 100...
He's got 4 all up.
He's got 4 all up. Let's go through it. So there's the one at Sydney...
During the World Cup
of 2015. There's the 2 in the World Cup of 2023.
Yep.
And there's 100 in between.
Which was one that engendered belief that this guy can really do it.
Christ, I can't remember what it was.
You can remember what it was.
I must have been there.
It was a big chase.
It was a big chase.
You weren't there.
It was a big chase.
Actually, I think you were there.
A big chase. Give me some parameters here.
You were there, but nobody else was.
Oh yeah, I was there. Old Trafford. Old Trafford in the COVID week when I got to live at Old Trafford for a week. I wish I could live at Old Trafford all the time.
Yeah.
R.I.P. the Red Rose Suite. A lot of bad stuff happened in there, which was our play area.
108 is what he made in the run chase of 300 and whatever it was with Alex Carey.
Yeah. King Carey and Maxi put on a shitload. They were 5 for fuck
They were
all.
5 for 70 something, chasing 300 plus.
Billings have made a ton, I think.
Yep.
Anyway, it was a terrific chase. Yeah.
So the pledge is now obsolete, meaning it's not the 201, but if you add 104 to 108 to 145, you get 357, which is the number for Not That Tim Minchin, which also did make me think, okay, could he repair that now that he's got the 201 in ODIs? It gives him a lot of headroom when he makes his comeback to Test cricket to go from 104 up to 200. He could score anywhere in there, and that would still be fine. Yeah. And then all he needs to do is get a T20 score, T20 International score of more than 201. Is that possible? I think maybe it is possible. I just worked through this. Say you hit 1/6 every over through a T20. Obviously, you're batting first.
Yeah.
Otherwise, or you're chasing an absolute monstrous amount. If you hit 1/6 every over, you make 120 runs, right? You get 20 by 6.
I'm willing to accept that logic.
20 balls.
The arithmetic checks out.
120 off 20 balls. Okay, let's say you're out there batting.
What are 12-12s?
144.
Good. Just making sure you're sharp.
I'm on it. I got this. All right. So say you're batting and you're dominating the strike. Maybe you take 4 balls out of each over if you're batting with someone who understands.
Michael Rowland did it every over.
Their job is to... Their job is
Michael Rowland reporting from Washington.
Chuck Norris won by 5. Right. So if you're facing 4 balls out of every over, you've got 80 balls in the innings, right?
Yep. Okay.
20 of those have been used hitting a 6 off every ball. So that leaves you 60 balls to get 80 runs without hitting a 6. Is that viable? So then I looked at every score where somebody has... what are the highest scores in T20 International cricket without hitting a 6? And it's broadly possible. You need a strike rate of 133.3 from the non-6 balls. Patam Nasanka made 75 off 53 balls in Dharamshala, which is broadly on track. You got all the way back to R.T. Ponting. He made 76 off 53 at the Brabourne in 2007. That's on track in terms of strike rate. Rizwan made 78 off 52 in Karachi against the Windies. His mate Babar Azam made 79 off 53 right here in this town in Christchurch. Faf made a 79 off 61 balls in Mirpur. Faf Duplessis.
Faffing about,
horsing around. And the club leader, Sami Sohail of Malawi, made 94 not out from 60 balls, which
Get
is
him on
exactly
the show.
Our mark against Lesotho in Kigali in the grudge match in 2022. So it can be done. You can make 80 off 60 balls without a 6, and you can hit 26s. You know, Owen Morgan did 17 against Afghanistan. Someone could do 20 in a T20. It is possible to score a double 100 in T20 international cricket. Glenn Maxwell can do it, and then he will have restored his highest, being its T20 score, then his ODI best, and then his Test best of, let's say, 184, which will be coming next year.
It'll be coming in Sri Lanka this time next year, not to put too many expectations on Glenn's shoulders here or anything.
That's it. That's the number. That's plus some extra for Not That Tim Minchin.
Bloody hell. What an answer that is. Thank you, Jeff, and thank you to Not That for being such a loyal supporter of the show, as is the next man who we are dealing with here. Dane Hansted, regular pledger, straight from the bakery into our inbox. Yep. Beautiful human being. Dano's Leg Spin, his blog on Facebook, which is most enjoyable as well. $12.50.
$12.50 is the number. There's nothing else with it. It's usually about Victorians.
Normally.
One other time it has not been about Victorians, so there is that possibility. But who knows what Dano has come up with. After getting a fresh tray of donuts out of the oven at the bakery and popping them in the glass case for people to come in and enjoy. We are yet to detour via the bakery in country Victoria, but one day we will. $12.50, $12.50, 1250. What do you got?
So you're telling me it's unlikely to be about an ethnic minority in Pakistan?
Just look, past performance is not a reliable indicator of future performance, but the past performance would suggest no.
Okay. I'm going to spread my wings anyway. Okay. Dane will appreciate, I hope.
Yep.
There are a lot of ways of coming at this. I'll start with, I'll do 12 and 50 together. 50 from 12 balls. That's what Yuvraj Singh did to Stuart Broad.
Yeah.
With the 6 sixes in and over.
Yeah, nice one.
In the 2007 T20 World Cup.
Until the bloke, was it... beat it against Mongolia.
Yeah.
Was it Nepal?
Yeah, Nepalese player, I think.
Mongolia?
Yeah. So, 12 ball 50, which had this enormous cultural impact, right? It's the pre-IPL era. India make 218 for 4 with these iconic names of the era. Gambier, Sehwag, Dhoni, UV, and the broad 6.6s, none for 60. It's I don't know how many views it's got on YouTube, but I'm tipping it's in the billions.
Broad City.
More than Gangman style.
Gangman?
Gangman?
Gangnam.
Gangnam.
Gangnam
What a funny old
is a
time.
different video.
Yeah, there probably is. What a weird time that was, 2012. Like, that was a cultural touchstone for about 3 months there.
Totally.
There'll be some speeches that have dated very poorly by using that as a...
Oh, yeah. The only joke that still works with is, I think, Ben Jenkins going, "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and may I wish a very warm Oppa Gangnam style to you all."
Yeah, YouTube, early days.
First video to hit 1 billion views.
Yeah. I said to about...
I was watching it. I was barracking for it. Like, I was tracking it. I was checking back in as it got to like 800 million. I'm like, this is going to get there. And it kept going.
We did a thing in 2012, a Christmas thing in 2012 when I was still in the other line of work, where I remember distinctly Gillard doing a Gangman style joke.
Oh, no.
And again, it was of its time.
It was of its time.
It was of its time. Then I quickly scurried off downstairs to
just
watch.
Like 6 months ago, everyone was doing a Matilda's penalty shootout bit or whatever.
Yeah, ran downstairs to watch Nathan Lyon bowl out South Africa at the Wacker 2012. That was the first innings. We all know what happened later on. Anyway, that's right. Wanted to say that England gave it a good old shake. They chasing 218. They got the 200 for 6. Who top scored for England that day? You could have 100 guesses and you wouldn't get it right.
Michael Yardy.
That's a reasonable guess.
Yeah.
Given Vikram Solanki, I don't think was on your bingo card. Okay. He played in that World Cup in 2007 and made 50 odd or something like that when chasing the 200 for 6.
Did Ravi Bopara play in that?
Don't know. I didn't interrogate the scorecard. Okay. I just thought of the high scorer. I myself and
it feels like he would have. I'd like to, have them introduce someone at those sportsman's night, things like that. It feels like he played about 17 test matches.
That's what we did with Buff earlier. I think he played 25. Might have played 27.
27. I'm going to go with 27 because Cameron Green got to 27 in Wellington, and I'm pretty sure I remember seeing that. I was, it was players who played about that many. Bruce Reed, Darren Lehman, a couple others.
Okay. Cam Green, year 16 going on 17. I was looking at the dates after that, so I thought 1st of February 19. I had dates in my mind after that August 89 thing. 1st of February 1950. I thought, well, let's play around with this. And my brain just went to the 1950-51 Ashes because I'm like, I just talked about that with Len Hutton earlier today. Right. And I did this whole thing on the 1950-51 Ashes. And Matt May, in our Nerd Pledge CSI group, did exactly the same thing because, of course, the 50-51 Ashes, it would be the 1st of February 1951. But given we were talking about it earlier, fuck it, I'm going to talk about the 1950-51 Ashes. Okay, you all right with that?
I'm all right. I'm happy
because so we're 365 days out from this. And the reason I wanted to do this is because it's a not sexy series. Like we think of the 48 Ashes with the Invincibles, the 53 Ashes with is it the Ashes? Yes, it's the Ashes. 1956 with Jim Laker and all the rest and what happened at Old Trafford. 50-51 though, this is not a series that rolls off the tongue. I've devoted barely any thinking to this ever. So let me tell you about it. Let me tell you why we're right not to devote much time to it.
I know Len Hutton made a lot of runs.
Yes, he did, but there's a reason why his average
88.83.
And there's a reason why his average was inflated. We'll get to that. Freddie Brown was the captain.
Oh, yeah.
Peruvian. Zone. We've done that Peru bit before.
It's like Boyzone. After Boyzone from Lima is Peruzone.
Yes, that's right. We've done the Freddie Brown Peru bit before. Just wanted to note what an extraordinary career he had, Freddie Brown. So he made his debut for England in 1931 against New Zealand. So 31, right, as a 21-year-old lad.
Okay.
Played against the 1930 Australians, so that side that was so well heralded, and Bradman's first to England and so on, and made a 50 against the touring Aussies in 1930. Remembering the series I'm about to talk about is 20 and 21 years later.
Sure.
He was in and out of the England side in the 1930s, never quite established himself as an all-rounder. Yep. He went on to become a war hero. He was part of the Crete evacuation, central to that in 1942.
Right.
Is it earlier on, wasn't it? The Crete thing happens earlier,
Crete's
isn't it?
earlier. Yeah.
I think. Anyway, he's in the middle of all of that. And after the war, he comes back and plays for Northampton, reinvents himself as a bowler. He captains the county. And in 1949, he takes them from last to sixth. And that is sufficient to get him made the England captain at age 39, as you do. It's not the interwar period, but it's the post-World War II period, and that's a little bit loose as well.
If it was the 1800s, all you had to do to be England captain was make like 14 and have read a book.
Well, this guy was, his dad was in business in Peru, which is why he was born there. He's an amateur, not a professional. So, he had a bit of dosh behind him. So he hadn't played for England since 1937, and 12 years later he's brought back to captain them against New Zealand for a couple of test matches in 49, another test against the Windies in 1950. Nothing much going on though. You look at his numbers in these games, he's not doing anything of note. Took a few wickets and that's about it. Made a couple of runs, took a few catches. He's made the captain of the Gents against the Players, and he dominates that game at Lords. Hits a six into the pavilion. He's nearly 40. He's old, but he's a big dude. He's strong. And when George Mann and Norman Yardley, who captained in 48, declined the offer to take England to Australia in 50-51, they said to Freddie, "Do you mind?" And he goes, "Yeah, okay, I'll do it. I'll do it."
Fancy a boat ride?
Yeah, fancy a long trip and 5 months in Australia and getting the shit beaten out of you. You're our man.
Free boat ride for 3. Now,
and it's a week.
Take Keith and T-Pain. Freddie Brown and T-Pain on the boat to Australia playing deck quoits.
Yeah. What a time. That would have been so much fun. Playing. I mean,
aside from the vomiting and the
I was going to
diphtheria.
say, bored shitless. I would have read a lot, I'm sure, but none of the modern. I'm sure when you're on a cruise these days, you're connected the whole way around.
Imagine what like the toilet facilities are like on a transoceanic ship
rather not.
in 1940 whatever.
I'd rather not think about this.
Yeah, you'd just be over the railing. You'd just be like holding onto a rope.
Relief.
Yeah,
and all that. It's a weak side. But it's made yet weaker when Freddie Brown shuffles Len Hutton down to number 6.
Okay.
So, they don't exactly play to their strength there, Hutton being an all-timer.
The greatest opener.
But gets a lot of red ink. He ends up making not a small amount of runs, 533 runs, but isn't dismissed that often. Thus, his average is, as we described earlier, or explained earlier, 88.83. Brown did pretty well with the ball, took 21 wickets across the series, and the Aussies loved him. The crowds loved him because they were smashing up the Poms. And here's this captain who's doing his best. He's in his 40s. So, it was played in pretty good spirits by the sounds of things. But yes, they do lose 4-1. It's largely a low-scoring series. There's a Miller 100 at Sydney, an unbeaten Miller 100, which was a bit of razzle-dazzle.
That's Keith Miller, not David Miller.
Keith Miller, not David Miller. There's the Arthur Morris double-ton at 206.
Imagine after all that angst that I've had about David Miller not playing a test, he time travels back
He
to the 50s.
played one in 1951.
Suddenly, Crick Inva's Monkey Hornby on the scorecard, but it's for real. David Miller's playing in the 50s.
One day. When Dr. Samuel Beckett stepped into his quantum leap accelerator and vanished, maybe David Miller. The quantum leap has returned in America. I haven't watched it yet, but they've done a reboot of it.
Okay.
Maybe if they do a South African version of it, they could have David Miller playing a relative of Sam Beckett. Just hold that thought.
Samuel Beckett played
Samuel
first-class
Beckett
cricket.
and he played at Trinity, where I'm playing in a couple of weeks' time. Keep that in your mind. If Don Belisario is listening to this, the creator of Quantum Leap, just keep it in the back of your mind. David Miller to leap into Keith Miller's body in the Sydney Test match of 1950-51.
Keith Miller was leaping into a lot of other people's bodies.
Quite. That was part of the first Quantum Leap. Sam Beckett loved to fuck. Did a lot of rooting on the show. He had to play in character. He couldn't let on that he was from the future.
Sure.
But
and the only way to distract people from that is to sleep with them.
Yeah.
Okay. But keep them busy. No time for questions. Unless the question is, does that feel good?
So 1951, they're in Adelaide, right? And so the Morris double ton is high scoring Test cricket, 206. Fingleton, though, not so pleased in the press box by this point. It was one of the poorest Test matches in technique and spirit I have ever witnessed. It lacked virility from birth. The Australians came to it with no great spirit of adventure or relish after the Ashes had been won. So, they win. So England go on to win the final Test match.
Okay.
It was fitting in a way. I guess that's the custom, right? You're 4-0 up and England win. That happened quite a lot in the 80s and 90s, and indeed at
2003.
Sydney 2003. Probably fitting that Freddie Brown finished the series with a fifer in that winning effort. A nice thing to happen. But I do think there is a case that this sits with 2021-2022 as one of the worst Ashes series ever. One-sided scoreline.
Yeah.
Yeah, 4-0, then 4-1.
At least there were results.
There were results. There were 6-day test matches, which made it easier in that era. Mostly low scoring. The test matches were mostly wrapped up earlier on. It wasn't like it wasn't competitive. It was heavily lopsided. So Dan Liebke and Alex Bowden have done it's called the Incredible Ashes. It's called the Ridiculous Ashes. They've made a number of series about, great Ashes series or ones that are very interesting. I think they should go the other way and do one on 1950-51 and compare it to 21-22 and determine what was worse in terms of. I think 2021-22 was so bad because of COVID and the extra hoops that needed to be jumped through and that horrible COVID testing the England players were subjected to with the one that would go in their throat and out their nose again. That was full on. Or was it the other way around, in the nose and out the throat? Whatever it was.
There was always a kid at your primary school who could do that with like spaghetti, or one of those like snake lollies or something. They could like jam it up the nostril and then make a bunch of horrible sounds and kind of cough it out the back of their mouth, and then
why were they making the England team?
They'd be able to pull it in the nose and out the mouth.
This is in the baseball book, I think. Why were they making the England team do like the extra special COVID test? It doesn't seem right to me. No. Anyway, that's a job for Liebke and the king of the King's tweets, the king of cricket, King Cricket blog. It's an absolute beauty.
Yeah. Well, they probably would do it because they're not. The Ridiculous Ashes isn't about the best series; it's about the most ridiculous series.
I feel like this is not ridiculous. I feel like this was just
boring.
Shit.
Yeah, there's still a lot to make fun of.
Last thing I want to talk about before we move off this number is the date of birth. 1 to 50. One cricketer of note, Nasser Malik, who played 3 one-day internationals for Pakistan at the 1975 World Cup. Right. He's an Ahmadi Muslim, which is relevant because they were constitutionally had the Muslim tag taken away from them in 1974. Right. They're a minority. I don't know a lot about it. All I know is there's about 500,000 Ahmadis in Pakistan, and they've had a pretty tough run of things. Right. But by the reading I've done,
as belonging to the
and I don't want to go any further than that. 'Cause all I'll do is offend people. But it sounds like if you're an Ahmadi, this is not always an easy thing. And he's one of them. He's part of that cohort. He hadn't played a test match before, one of only 2 men in the Pakistan squad at the 1975 World Cup, the first World Cup to have been brand spanking new to the international team. However, he did go to England in 1974, had toured. That was a great trip for Pakistan where they were undefeated. It was their Invincibles trip, 74. So after England had towed up India at the start of the summer, Pakistan then won the test series 1-0, I'm pretty sure, and they didn't lose a game. So that might have been 0-0. But they didn't lose a game. Either way, it's a significant tour for Pakistan. He was a right-arm medium-fast bowler, and he makes his debut in that first World Cup game they play and bowled the first over. No, not Imran. Okay. Our guy got choice of ends, Nasser Malik. His first over went for 10, and his next 11, remembering they were 60-over games, so 12 overs per bowler at the 75 World Cup. 2 for 27 from his next 11 to finish with very acceptable figures of 2 for 37 from 12. He outbowled Imran Khan, at least on the scorecard. He picked up McCosker, picked up Walters, so 2 pretty good wickets there from the Australians. And that was the first ever game that Pakistan played in a World Cup, so he's got that privilege of being the first person to bowl a ball for Pakistan in any World Cup. I'm not sure if Pakistan's women played in 74. In fact, they couldn't have. We know they didn't. Of course they didn't. 73, sorry, the Women's World Cup that preceded the Men's World Cup. So there was no Pakistan women's team until much later. So that's him and him alone. Good bit of detail here that I found when reading a lengthy obituary about him.
They're not playing till the 1990s.
Yeah, the Khan twins who took them through.
Came to Australia and
took them
smuggled all the gear out.
Under the auspice of bringing carpet out to Australia and for their father's company. Anyway. That's a story for another time. So here's some detail from an obituary, a long obituary, tribute I read about him. Nasir Malik Shoaib's full name was Malik Nasir Ahmed. He was born on 27 November 1949, although it's commonly known to be 1 February 1950. So even this is a fudged up date. Okay. So even this date that he allegedly made his debut in life, came out of the womb and immediately picked up a cricket ball.
His debut in life. On debut, he has cried quite a bit and also shat a little bit.
It's like when I do that thing when you're looking up someone who isn't a cricketer and you put their name in Crick Info, like that's your default. I do that all the time, just
Joe Biden, Crick Info.
Yeah, I lots of I don't know if I'm
McPhee's,
if I'm watching a film, I'm prone to actor's name, Crick Info. I do it all the time. It's muscle memory. He was an engineer. He didn't play anymore for Pakistan, by the way. 5 wickets in that World Cup, and that was him done. He moved to fast bowling originally due to the influence of Fazal Mahmood, so it's a nice origin story. First-class career, 203 wickets between 1969 and 1982. Unfortunately, he died young in 1999 at the age of 49. I've got a photo of him here to show you, Jeff. Oh. Check out that head of hair.
Yeah, man.
That is a proper Buffont.
Yeah.
With the mustache, with the sort of snarl as well, the Lily-style mustache. Huge hair. Like kind of the early... I mean, that's how Shaheen Shah Afridi could look if he really wanted it.
If he didn't apply the epoxy resin spray to the top of the bonds before he heads out every morning. So that's what Shaheen would look like.
You can Google image that. I'm sure it's the photo that'll come up. It's a side part, then it's the kind of, Ray Martin hair helmet.
Yeah.
But with the South Australian Alexander Downer, Christopher Pine waves in it as well, which must be part of getting pre-selection for the Liberal Party in that part of the world.
South Australian accents, as we were earlier.
Exactly.
Christopher Pine.
Remember, Downers is worse than Pines, I've always thought, on that front. That pretentious...
I fixed it. I'm a fixer.
Yeah.
I fixed it.
Entertaining guy, Chris Pine. Anyway, so that's our man. That's Nasir Malik, who, as I say, passed away at age 49, but he was born, probably, maybe, possibly, on the first of the second 50, which was our number for Dane Hansted, and that's my final answer of the day.
There we go. Dano's leg spin. Somehow we've managed to turn a 4-answer show into an hour and a half. Miraculous from us.
Wasn't the plan.
Loaves and fishes. Wasn't the plan. We've blown through, but that's it. Well, let's leave it here. This has been story time.
Send in your numbers.
172. Send us a number. That's how we make the show. And then you get to enjoy the fruit of our labour, and we get to enjoy the fruits of yours. It's a reciprocal fruit arrangement.
And I can say that the next story time, 173, I'm recording with Daniel in a couple of days, and that will be out a few days after this. If this goes to plan, it'll be this, and the next episode in the feed will be another story time because we missed out because of the Christchurch Test match.
Yeah.
And everything will be back in sync, but I know a lot of people like it when Daniel subs in, so he's in for the next episode. Yes. And he has been furiously working on his answers, believe you me.
Yes, he has been working, furiously, on one clue in particular. I'm looking forward to hearing.
I think he's going to sledge our pleasure.
He's done it before and he'll do it again. Why not? It's all part of the fun. So get involved. Patreon.com/thefinalword.
Get a VPN.
Get a VPN. Check the show notes. Big discount. Apparently a lot of people have actually got it off this show, so that's good. That means that you have got yourself a sweet discount, and now the government doesn't know what you're doing, which may not always be a good thing, but probably a lot of the time it's a good thing. Anyway, that's it. That's enough from us. Story time. We'll see you later.
Ta-da.